Okay, so as you guys know, negotiations continued between Iran and the United States in Rome. This is the fifth talks over the nuclear program. Now, I'll share with you my views about the nuclear negotiations, but they supposedly had a positive breakthrough. So they'll say on Friday, May 23rd, a fifth round of nuclear talks in Rome were concluded with some, but not conclusive, progress as both sides remain divided over key issues like uranium enrichment and Iran's ballistic missile program. These talks were organized at the Oman embassy in Rome. As you know, the country of Oman, which is east of Yemen on the southern eastern tip of the Saudi Arabian Peninsula. They have been the mediators in these discussions because they're indirect. Some of the talks are direct, where Iranian and U.S. officials meet directly, but much of them are indirect. And it's because both sides are trying to pretend that they're not recreating exactly what happened under the Obama administration 10 years ago, but whatever. Direct, indirect, the point is they're talking, and Oman is setting that up. So those talks have been taking place, and Steve Witkoff has been sort of playing games He's been playing games with Iran. This is the fifth talk that they've had, and they've basically been re-agreeing to the same thing that they agreed early on when the negotiations were restarted a couple of months ago. And so the Trump administration, represented by Stephen Witkoff, the Middle East envoy, they've been changing their tune a lot. They come in very aggressive. They say, you better agree to what we want or we'll go to war. Then they say, okay, we'll consider uranium enrichment. Now we don't want any uranium enrichment. Ballistic missiles, we're not worried about that. Actually, we don't want you to have it at all. Then you have Marco Rubio and the war hawks in the administration and the entire Republican Party saying, we better not get the same deal that we had with Obama. So there's a lot of pressure on Trump optically to not agree to the same thing Obama had, even though Iran is making clear that the only thing they'll agree to is the agreement they already had with Obama, which was basically, we will not ever have I don't want to say ever, but we agree to not have a nuclear weapon. We'll keep enrichment low because uranium needs to be enriched at like 90-something% in order to develop a nuclear weapon. They're currently at like 50 or 60%. They're willing to go all the way down to 3% and have inspectors keep an eye on their program. But the U.S. is saying no, and the reason why they're saying no is because Israel is saying no. How does it affect the United States? It doesn't. The United States doesn't really care, but Israel cares. Israel wants Iran to destroy their entire nuclear program, which they've been designing and innovating and building for the last 50 years, trying to get to this point. There's a lot. It's their pride and joy, and their engineers have worked very hard on this. They're not going to just dismantle the centrifuges they've created, and there's a lot of believe it or not, there are a lot of benefits to having a nuclear program other than producing energy or a nuclear weapon. You can produce like a low-yield radioactive pesticide in order to improve agriculture, things of that nature. Then obviously there are medicinal, pharmaceutical benefits. So there's a lot of different ways you can benefit from this, and there's a reason why Iran has been insisting on this program. And so yeah, but Israel doesn't want them to have it at all because they know that if they agree today, in 20 or 30 years, when conditions change, Iran could just develop a nuclear weapon. So they don't want them to ever have one. We'll do a separate video about why later in the future. But Stephen Witkoff, it's clear that he's all over the place. And I think, in my opinion, he's doing this because the U.S. is doing what they've been doing over the last 2 years, which is using negotiations to undermine the opposing party. So with Hamas, for example, they've used negotiations to extract more and more hostages without ever putting an end to the genocide. They've been using negotiations with the Houthis and others to try and prevent them from trying to help stop the genocide in Gaza. And so they're just using negotiations as a tactic to stave off public opinion, to make the enemy think that they're not going to keep fighting them while they keep fighting them. And now they're using the negotiations with Iran to justify more sanctions. Like, hey, we're trying to negotiate an end to the nuclear program because we don't want to have a nuclear bomb, but they're not listening. So we have to increase sanctions even further and potentially do covert, activities against them in order to overthrow their government. And maybe even we have to go to war with them. So the negotiations, it seems right now, are just being used to do that. And, so this is happening with a lot of regional tensions right now. So the talks occurred under the shadow of Israeli threats and U.S. sanctions. Iran warns the U.S. would bear responsibility for any Israeli strikes, and reaching a full agreement before summer is considered unlikely. Now, the reason why this is being said is because of the fact that Israel, there was this leaked report where Israel supposedly was planning to attack Iran on its own and wanted the U.S.'s help, and that this was coming very, very soon. So can you imagine trying to negotiate with one gun to your head where the U.S. is saying, we'll attack you if you don't agree? Meanwhile, Israel is saying, we're going to attack them whether they agree or not, and Iran is supposed to negotiate in good faith. So there's a lot of confusion on their end, which is why their leader, the supreme leader, the Ayatollah, giving these speeches where he's saying, these people can never be trusted. They've tried to do this with us in the past. We're not going to fall for it, and we're ready for war at any moment. Now, a lot of people don't really buy that because True Promise 1 and True Promise 2, while impressive, were still performative and didn't really produce any casualties or any significant damage, and obviously didn't work to deter Israel from escalating with Iran or to deter the United States from playing games with them. And so they're making these big promises for True Promise 3 and a devastating blow, but in the past they haven't done so. So will they really punish the U.S. and Israel for escalating with them? We will see. Only time will tell. Now, as I said, the core disagreements, and here you can see this is the foreign minister of Iran, Araghchi, and he's handling the negotiations. He's leading them. And this is his Omani counterpart. And Oman has done a good job of trying to keep the negotiations alive, but we'll see. So what are the core disagreements? Iran persists on maintaining some level of uranium enrichment, viewing it as a matter of sovereignty, which is true. It is. It's their right. While the U.S. wants a deal on the table that involves civil nuclear use exclusively without enrichment of any kind, Iran considers these conditions unacceptable without strong guarantees of safety from Israel's threats. So what is being said here? So the United States is telling Iran, you can have your nuclear program, but you can't enrich the uranium yourself. We'll give you the enriched uranium. So you can buy it from other countries. You can buy it from other providers. You have to buy it from us. That way we know how much uranium you really have. Iran is saying, no, we have these centrifuges. We've designed them ourselves. We can enrich them ourselves, and it's our right to enrich it ourselves. Why should we be dependent on buying these resources from you? But the U.S. is saying, we'll let you keep your nuclear program for civilian uses, but you got to get the uranium from us. So it's an interesting, offer. Iran might accept it, but they're saying, without strong guarantees of safety from Israel, we're not going to agree to anything. So would Iran give up enrichment? Potentially. The U.S. wants them to give up enrichment and destroy the centrifuges. I don't think Iran would agree to that. There's a lot of investment in that. So they'll probably say, we'll keep the centrifuges, but we won't do any enrichment. We'll turn them off, and we'll let you guys monitor our centrifuges. Meanwhile, we'll buy the enriched uranium from you. So that could potentially take place. We don't know if Israel will accept it or not. They want full dismantlement and destruction of the centrifuges, no enrichment, no civilian nuclear program whatsoever, which would actually be beneficial for Iran because even though they have a ton of oil and gas, they can power their own country. If they have this nuclear program and they're not as dependent on their oil and gas, they can sell more of it even though they're under sanctions. So there's a lot of financial benefits to a nuclear program. So, yeah, you could just see here more images from their negotiations. And, yeah, so this is in Rome in the embassy.